My name's Rex. She'll call me Captain.
What if I told you that the Republic was now under the control of the Dark Lord of the Sith?
The shroud of the dark side has fallen.
On heavy.
Begun. The Clone War has.
Hello and welcome to The World Between Worlds, a Star Wars podcast where we will be marathoning all of the Star Wars canon content in chronological order, including the Clone Wars, which we are on right now. This is Season 1, Episode 8, Bombad Jedi, Season 1, Episode 9, The Cloak of Darkness, and Season 1, Episode 10, Lair of Grievous. My name is Yates. I will be the moderator for the discussion. Joining me are...
Keats. Jordan.
Jessica.
Jessica's back!
Back from the hospital!
Feeling great! So Jessica, you have been out for the introduction of Ahsoka Tano, the first female Jedi main character. You've been out for the Malevolence arc, but she came back for Jar Jar Binks' first, second arrival, including supply lines for the Clone Wars. Jar Jar.
Coming back strong. Only Jar Jar can bring me back from the brink.
All right, Jessica, let's go right into it. Would you like to talk about Bombad Jedi and what happened in that episode?
Yeah, so I'm not as big of a fanboy as everyone else, so you guys might have to help me with some people, places, and things, but...
I'm on it. Fanboy Wiktionary.
Okay, thank you very much.
Wikipedia pulled up.
I'm a real fan. I have Wikipedia open to answer all my questions.
Right. So this is one of my favorite episodes. No, it really is. I love this episode, and I'll get into why I really relate to the action here. But just to give a quick recap of the plot, Padme is called to
Rhodia.
Basically, Rhodia doesn't have food. Why don't they have food?
I think it's just the Republic needed aid or something, or the shipping lanes are perhaps cut off by the Separatists, and the Republic can't provide them what they need.
They say I think they say it's en route. It's just taking a little bit longer than they expected.
Not the first time I have heard that. Buying merchandise from China or
right. It's
calling out China.
Whoa.
Right?
Oh my god.
That's not PC.
All right, rewind. No, we'll leave it. Everyone knows it takes a long time to ship from China. Okay? This isn't a controversial.
If you're in the U.S., if you're in China and you're ordering from China, it's going to be pretty quick.
Oh my god, Keith, you're right. I'm so sorry. Keep going, Jessica, please.
Thank you. So, the people are starving on this planet, peaceful planet Rhodia, and it keeps getting blocked in the Senate because no one cares because they're not powerful. Mm-hmm. So
they're in the Outer Rim.
They're in the Outer Rim, exactly, which always means not powerful, I guess. Is Padme's planet in the Outer Rim? Naboo?
I think it's maybe a mid-rim planet.
Okay.
It's which would be,
It's near Tatooine.
It is kind of near Tatooine, yeah, and Tatooine is in the Outer Rim, so...
Mid-rim is the perfect part of the rim.
Exactly, that's where you want to be in the rim for sure.
It's where you take your shot. So she goes there, and she's I don't need any, troops or anything. This is a peaceful mission. But it ends up that her uncle, her family friend, Ono, who's the leader of the planet, pulls a little 1-2 punch on her to get food for his people. And he's partnering with the Sith.
And Viceroy Gunray specifically. The whole point is to try to capture Padme and use her as a hostage. And because he still holds a grudge after all these years.
Right.
Yeah, he really, really wants her.
Yeah, I mean that was literally the whole plot of Attack of the Clones was just at the end of the day who wants to kill Padme? It's like, oh, like Viceroy Gunray is just really hung up on this thing that happened 10 years ago.
What is his deal?
He can't let it go, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess like Padme just is like very like powerful, hot commodity in this war. Like that's one of the main parts of the plot. The other main part of the plot is that, because there's no clones with her on this mission, she just has C-3PO and
Representative Binks.
And Representative Binks Jar Jar there. Just like the worst people that you would ever want helping you like fight and defend yourself, but actually turns out not to be the case. And Jar Jar is like either the most foolish Jedi or the best Jedi that anyone's ever seen. And that's just like, I really liked seeing all of the kind of like slapstick comedy and just like wacky antics that Jar Jar gets himself into to be like a hero. He's a real innocent.
You are okay, Boggy? You are saving me. You are my new pal.
So, Jessica, could you perhaps talk at first about how do you identify with Jar Jar?
Because you're the most passionate Jar Jar fan on this panel.
And
on this planet.
I like Jar Jar too, but like I like Jar Jar, but you're definitely on a whole other level, and I think perhaps some of the audience might be a little intimidated. So maybe you could just
I have that effect on people.
Maybe you could talk a bit about why Jar Jar you identify with him in that way.
So like, okay, so when you're at home like watching Star Wars, as an adolescent, you're just like, oh yeah, Star Wars, like I'm Luke, I'm
pew 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 pew.
Yeah, like I'm like one of these heroes, like I'm Padme, like that's who, I identify with. And I do feel like, yeah, I would totally be Padme if I was like in this situation, but on a deeper level, I realized that I definitely would not, and I would really be more like C-3PO, which is just like really anxious all the time. But in my goals, I would be Jar Jar. Because Jar Jar's just like, if anything, he's going with, maybe not with the Force, but he goes with the flow. And because he's just so innocent and just kind of like goes with things and always has his heart in the right place, like he ends up like just really being a hero and like doing the right thing, and it all works out for him.
You identify your spirit with Representative Binks.
I like identify like the goals of like my spirit with Representative Binks. Like my spirit is more like on a C-3PO level, but like I'm trying to get more on a Jar Jar level, and this is me just like being realistic. Like instead of me trying to like, be a Jedi or whatever, I'm just trying to be like a normal.
Right, so Jar Jar and C-3PO have an interesting dynamic in this episode, I think. And both of them are probably like the most comic relief of all the comic relief characters in Star Wars. I mean, there's just Jar Jar and then C-3PO in the original trilogy. And them being paired together, Jar Jar is, I think, definitely the way you describe, and then C-3PO is the one that's kind of like pulling Jar Jar back, and it's just like, please, Jar Jar, like, none of this, like, let's just give up. Like, there's no point. We can't save Padme. The clones aren't here. We're doomed. Jar Jar, let's just get out of here and run.
C-3PO is a coward.
Yeah, he's like always wants to give up. Like as soon as like anyone dies, he's just like, I knew they would die. Like I was like, he's just so like not who you want on your side.
Sure. He's always just like looking out for himself. And cares about his life too much, but he can literally be shut off at any time. So,
but as annoying as he is, and like I find him relatable.
Yeah.
And like maybe you're not supposed to admit that, but I can relate.
Well, even in the original Star Wars movie, I think C-3PO and R2 were the original like audience surrogate character. So you're definitely supposed to identify with him to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's like C-3PO didn't choose this life. He like didn't choose the life of high adventure. I mean, like Anakin and Padme literally just like accidentally stole him back in Attack of the Clones. Like he was literally just ran a farm before, and now he's like in the middle of the galactic conflict, and he just doesn't want to be there.
Even when he ran a farm, he was just like, I didn't ask for this. Like I didn't ask to be born. Like, and relatable. And I mean, do admit that like Jar Jar episodes and Gungan episodes are like they're hard to watch. You know, it can be very hard to watch.
This one wasn't that hard though.
No, this
For me.
one was fun.
Yeah, I actually laughed a lot.
Yeah,
I
this
enjoyed
was
Jar
fun.
Jar.
One of my favorite recurring gags is Jar Jar's nickname for C-3PO. Does anyone remember it?
Threeso.
Threeso.
So
That's not my name.
Like, why? I guess just Jar Jar doesn't say things right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one was really funny. And when he destroyed the ship, they really got like all the comedic elements right in the Clone Wars. They didn't.
That they didn't in the prequels.
That they didn't in the prequels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jar Jar I think works really well as a cartoon character.
Yeah, no, for sure. I actually like Jar Jar.
Okay, so Jar Jar does accidentally like totally mess up the ship, which isn't good. But for the most part, I mean, Jar Jar, like when we talk about like Jar Jar sort of accidentally stumbling into like saving the day, that is true, but he also really wants to save Padme. Like,
But our only hope is to hide in this closet until Mistress Padme returns.
If those droids attacking us, Padme's probably in trouble.
My lady gave us very specific instructions to remain here.
Oh, fiddlesticks! We must have and try and saving her.
Jar Jar Binks, have you gone completely mad? You'll do more harm than good.
C-3PO's ready to give up, and Jar Jar's like, are you kidding me? Padme's out there. She's my friend, and I love her, and I need to save her.
He has one of the most pure hearts.
Yeah.
He just cares about his friends so much. That's the heart of Jar Jar.
Obi-Wan
heart
is
is
always
totally-
so mean to him. Why is Obi-Wan so mean to him?
his heart is totally in the right place. More so than some of the Jedi. Like, the Jedi should take, like, a page out of Jar Jar's book. Like, let's just all be nice. Okay. That's my politics here. Like, he's very pure. And he does save the day, but he also, like, you know, he gets himself, like, he, like, digs himself deep into the hole, but then he somehow, like, gets himself, like, out of the whole mess and everyone else. But as usual, like, Padme is the one who's, like, kind of the brains behind the operation, like, making sure that, like, all of this madness and chaos is, like, actually gonna pan out.
And to be fair, we didn't even really talk about it. This is also Padme's, like, first Padme-centric episode. She just happens to share it with Jar Jar, who ends up, you know, the episode's called Bombad Jedi. It is definitely geared a bit more towards Jar Jar, but it's a good opportunity for Padme to be on her own and show off her own strengths. And we only get a few Padme episodes each season, but for them, I really enjoy most of them, and I think this is, right off the gate, we've already talked about a lot of the qualities that we really enjoy seeing Padme in this, that maybe we didn't get out of Attack of the Clones. It was kind of 50-50 with me on Padme and Attack of the Clones. But in general, yeah, she is a pretty intuitive and smart person.
Yeah, and I think with the lack of Padme episodes, this is like I've always wanted to learn more about Padme as a character, and I think the upcoming Padme novel is really gonna give us some more depth to Padme in general.
Queen Shadow, is that it? That's what it's called?
Yeah, Queen Shadow. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, like, there's so much you could do with Padme, and what pissed me off a bit about her portrayal in the movie was just, like, half of her, like, 3/4 of her character was just, like, she has cool outfits. Which, I mean, I like cool outfits probably more than most people, but I also really, like, how did she get so smart and, like, cunning? And you can see, like, that element of her in this episode.
Yeah, I really liked the moment at the end where Padme, you know, after everything ends up wrapping up and the Viceroy has the opportunity to escape, and then Padme, like, really smartly uses the opportunity to put everything in Onofar's hands and just be like, hey, like...
This was your plan, like, all along, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome.
At last, we can finish this.
Anaconda, it is about time! Blast that Jedi and shoot her!
Uncle Anno, I think it's time to tell the Viceroy about our little secret. How you never meant to leave the Republic, and how you truly care what's best for your people.
What is she talking about?
Sorry, Viceroy. She is right. I am with the Republic, and you are under arrest.
She's smart, and she's able to, like, and obviously she's, like, super forgiving, because this is, like, an uncle character, like a close character for her that betrayed her, and she's still willing to like give him another chance. Whereas, like, you know, imagine like Anakin in that type of situation, it probably involves taking out a lightsaber and killing that person.
Yeah, she's like a good diplomat, and she's like a good chess player. I mean, Uncle Ono like basically immediately regretted his decision.
Yeah.
He was like, wait, the Sith aren't just gonna leave me alone after I side with them? Like, yeah, no crap.
One thing I think you mentioned it before, Jessica, but I think it's worth talking about is the fact that sort of the main catalyst behind the events of this episode is that Rhodia is either leaving the Republic or is a neutral system and is considering joining the Separatists, which is like I don't remember which one it was, but in either case they're on that precipice.
Yeah, that's something I love about the show. It's just like it gets more into like the politics and all the different planets and like how something like this came about in the first place, and it does a good job of showing like why like a peaceful like good planet would be drawn towards the separatists in the first place, and that's like because the Senate is not working for like a lot of people.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of Shmi's line in The Phantom Menace, where Padme is like going to her first Outer Rim planet, and she goes like, I can't believe
there's still slavery in the galaxy. The Republic's anti-slavery laws are...
The Republic doesn't exist out here. We must survive on our own.
Excuse me.
Yeah, it's just like, eye roll, Padme.
Yeah.
I can't believe poor people exist. I heard about them, but I never saw them. It's like, oh, wow, thanks for the representation, Padme.
Maybe we'll see more of that in Queen Shadow.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely possible. So the Viceroy is captured, and that leads right into the next episode, which is Cloak of Darkness. I really liked this episode, and it picks up exactly from Bombad Jedi and where it left off. I'm not sure if we mentioned this before, but essentially this is an arc about the capture of Viceroy Gunray, strangely enough, but you know the main cast of characters changes each time. So the Viceroy is captured, and he's being curried to Coruscant. Presumably to stand trial for everything.
War crimes.
Yeah, for war crimes. You know, didn't work before, but let's try it again this time. The main characters in this one are Ahsoka and the new character Luminara. Although technically we did see Luminara in the Malevolence arc for 5 seconds. Ahsoka has been signed to Luminara, and Luminara is, you know, a lot different from Anakin, and
very different.
And a lot of the episode is sort of them figuring out where they stand with each other, Ahsoka reacting to a different type of instructional and like a different mentor figure than Anakin, and then Luminara sort of having to react to this brash student that she doesn't quite understand, but also underestimates a bit.
Is it like a Padawan? I don't mean to cut you off, but is it like do you think it's a Padawan test to kind of assign them to each different council member to show them off to every kind of way that you can go about dealing with the Clone War?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it could also be like tactical. I mean, they could just need Anakin to go off on a solo mission. It's not really very clear. Or like, yeah, the mission is too dangerous for Ahsoka. But the main heart of the episode is sort of them trying to figure out where they stand with each other. And the main threat is in the Separatist attack to cut off the Republic and recapture Viceroy Gunray, or potentially silence him because he knows way too much. He knows likely the identity of Darth Sidious. He is probably also bankrolling the Separatists as well. So there's that whole element of the importance of New Gunray. And I also think it's probably the first time in these episodes where like we see the opportunity for there to be justice. Like, this is a character from the other two films as well, from Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, that has been causing trouble for our protagonists since day one. And this is an opportunity for us to get some sort of justice as an audience. So I think that has it going for it in terms of the stakes of the episode. And then the counterattack is led by Asajj Ventress, who's on like a stealth mission to retrieve the Viceroy New Gunray. I thought this was a really solid like stealth suspense episode. For me, Ahsoka and Luminara's relationship was like probably the most interesting part of it.
Yeah, Luminara saw a side of Anakin that highly influenced Ahsoka in the way she kind of like threatened the Viceroy to give them information, because she was like being super impatient. Luminara is just like closing her eyes and like, I know you have secrets, like tell us whatever.
If you're merely a pawn, then who are you protecting?
No one! I know nothing!
Liar! Liar! I'm tired of all this whining. Tell us what we want to know right now, or I will gut you like a Rokarian dirtfish. Padawan! Terror is not a weapon the Jedi use. I wasn't serious, but the only way he'll talk is if he's scared enough.
Yeah, which is pretty crazy.
She wasn't serious, but still, it's.
I mean,
not
but
the
was
Jedi
she though?
way.
It's like,
yeah,
you know,
she sounded pretty
Ahsoka
serious.
just says, yeah, she did seem pretty serious. Then Ahsoka says, well, I was just kidding around. But, you know, she's like, we have to do this. That's what Ahsoka says. Like, we have to do this. This is the only language that someone like the Viceroy understands. That's Ahsoka's perspective going into this, which is like totally different than what Luminara, which is really by the books Jedi character. And I thought Luminara.
Does that make it right?
What?
That like she's just trying to communicate with Viceroy Gunray in the only language that he understands. Is it right to go about it Luminara's way, or is that, what do you think?
I feel like it's like, that's a really good question, because I think that that's like a lot of what this whole series deals with, is just like, how do you respond to this kind of threat? Do you respond in kind, or do you like stick to your doctrine? Like, do you stick to the old ways because by responding with like increased violence, you enhance the violence? Or like, are you screwing yourself by like sticking to the old ways because it's not sufficient for like the current challenges? Mm-hmm. That was my hospital equipment.
that was a good one.
Nice save.
I think there is a direct answer, but I also think as an audience member, like, we know what Viceroy Gunray's metal is made out of. Like, we know that he will submit to a threat like that. We know that the Viceroy is spineless, and that will absolutely get us what they want. And it worked. Yeah, and it worked. And the whole, well, yeah, he did admit that he would give them everything they wanted, and Luminara was like, no, Ahsoka, get over here. We're not going about it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, they kind of like, just like, because they have a hammer, they like look for the nails. Like, they like look for the times when they can use it, even when it's not necessary. And there's kind of like two types of Jedis. There's like the more like vanguard, like creative, but also like non-rule abiding. And then there's the more just like dignified, by the book, but also maybe like a little bureaucratic and like ineffective.
Yeah, I think Luminara definitely sort of falls into that second category. Yeah. But I think Luminara overall was a pretty likable character. Yeah. In terms of, and I feel like this is getting a bit of a tired statement. Maybe it's just because the Clone Wars is so good, but like, we've talked a lot before about like sort of it's hard to get into like the Qui-Gon mind space, and like, is what Qui-Gon is doing in episode 1, like, are all these decisions he's making, is that okay? Or like the decision to get in the war in Attack of the Clones, like, I don't really get that decision. Is that okay for the Jedi to do? But then there are a couple characters, like I felt like Shakti a couple episodes back was like a really cold Jedi, example of a really cold character like Qui-Gon. But a lot of these characters like Plo Koon, like Yoda, like Luminara, and like Kit Fisto in the next episode are all really likable, I think, Jedi characters. Like, pretty inherently, you're like really on their side, and I really liked Luminara.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of I don't want to say likability, but like for Luminara's character and what she accomplished in this episode, I definitely like found her likable. But as we can look back on 2 weeks ago with where we're introduced to Plo Koon, I found him likable because he kind of has different perspectives on like the clones and stuff like that, as opposed to like very like the standard Jedi role model. And I feel like even though Luminara was going by the book, I didn't really see any specific perspective that she had that's different from the general guideline of the Jedi Order. Am I wrong?
She's like, I agree, she's just good, but you wouldn't want to like watch like a series about Luminara.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think kind of thinking about it, it makes me think like, well, how much of all of this chaos is caused by almost like Qui-Gon's original sin of maybe just being bored with the Jedi, because he trained Obi-Wan, who trained Anakin, who trained Ahsoka, and they're all just kind of like, shwoo, 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 like, I love violence, like, I'm really good at violence, but like, I'm good.
I really love those words put together, Qui-Gon's original sin.
Qui-Gon's original sin. Or Count Dooku's original sin, rather, because Count Dooku is Qui-Gon's master.
Yoda's
original master.
Oh my god.
George Lucas's original
Oh my
sin.
god.
Who is the puppet master. No, but I think that is actually maybe the heart of it, is that Count Dooku was the one training this whole like school, and he ended up going totally dark side.
Yeah,
and you can see a little bit of the dark side in all of those characters, but that's also what makes them more interesting.
So you're saying maybe Count Dooku has a part in like the
like, why are they're all different?
I think it was just like, it's like with anybody, like the way you're raised by your parents, you're gonna grow up to be just like them. So it's the same with like masters.
But are you saying that you think it's Count Dooku's responsible for like how the Jedi Code is a little bit up in the air in terms of moral, like morally questionable?
Or maybe not also, even that, but like it's just there is like a infection within the Jedi of like there's this whole like offshoot that's like a little bit more like willing to compromise just like the purity.
Yeah, definitely. I think Ahsoka's moment in the interrogation room is a prime example of that, for sure.
Yeah, and just to go back on Luminara for a second, I think the reason why Luminara is so interesting in this episode is because she's mainly, even though she's the master in this scenario, she's really like, in terms of the story, she's kind of complementing Ahsoka and her perspective on things. So even though she's kind of like the Zen, more traditional Jedi, it's the whole dynamic between Ahsoka and Luminara that makes Luminara really interesting as a character.
And isn't it in this episode that Ahsoka ends up kind of, her methods work out?
Yeah.
Like her methods prove effective in the end.
I owe you my life, Ahsoka.
Protecting a Jedi Master is the role of a Padawan.
And teaching is usually the role of the Master. Master Skywalker should be proud.
Yeah, so that whole interrogation scene results in Luminara sort of scolding Ahsoka, and then when it comes for the attack and Ventress is sort of infiltrating the base, the ship, Luminara tells Ahsoka to hold back, stay here, guard the Viceroy. I'm gonna handle what's going on out there. And you can interpret that as Luminara being tactical, but Ahsoka's the one that says Ventress is extremely dangerous. You don't want to go in there on your own. And then Luminara does end up getting bested by Ventress because Ventress, like a lot of the other villains, isn't afraid to play dirty, burns Luminara in the eye, knocks her down, crushes her leg with a gigantic pipe, and Luminara
Dude, that made me wince. When I saw her pink eye, I was like, oh!
Yeah.
But just Ventress in general makes me win. Yeah.
Yeah, she's kind of gross looking.
She's so
pretty
gross.
looking. I wouldn't really necessarily call Ahsoka win all the way because at the end of the day,
she saved Luminara's life.
She's right. Kind of most of the time though.
But she saved Luminara's life, but at the cost of losing New Gunray.
That's true.
Yeah, it's a little like Jar Jar-esque, where it's like, let me cause a bunch of problems and then solve them.
She had no idea that White Boy was gonna betray them.
But that's the reason she was there, was to make sure that nothing happened.
Also, Luminara didn't know that Argaius was going to end up betraying them either. And I thought that was an interesting arc. So we've already seen in season 1 the hidden enemy episode. I think that's episode 16, but it's one of the first ones chronologically. So we watched that first.
How could you do this to your brothers?
Only a Jedi would ask that. It's the Jedi who keep my brothers enslaved. We do your bidding. We serve at your whim. I just wanted something more. And all you had to do to get it was put the rest of us all at risk. I love my brothers. You're too blind to see it.
We've already seen a clone turn on the Republic. In this case, it was a little different. It was an Imperial not Imperial, a Republic Senate guard. It's not like he's not a clone trooper. He's not raised in like that insular world. He is just a member of the Republic, probably from Coruscant, that was just like, I'm hedging my bets. I'm going to Count Dooku because I think he's the right one and he's the one that's going to win the war.
Well, he said he paid him off.
Yeah.
Wasn't his argument basically like, I'm bored of my life? Like
he was just bribed with money.
Yeah. He was like, but his reason was like, I hate, like, I'm essentially a clone. Like, I'm a cog in the machine, and like, I want freedom.
Yeah, he says to be, the big line is like, to be a good soldier, you need to
do what you feel is right.
Yeah, you need to do what you feel is right and what works for you. That's what makes us different than droids, is that we have the ability to make that decision.
That's probably my favorite quote of the 3 episodes.
Yeah.
In this episode, there was some stuff about the consciousness between all the different players within this war, and like, I think that the clones and the droids, and then also just the like bureaucrats, but they all kind of like struggle with their orders like versus their freedom.
There's a very smart choice at the beginning of the very beginning of the episode. It's probably within the first minute, maybe 2 minutes tops, where the Viceroy gives Commander Gree, who is the main clone trooper in this episode and will be a main player, makes it all the way to Revenge of the Sith. He shows up. He is given the choice by the Viceroy to exactly what was given to Captain Argyus. He's like, I will give you anything you want. And the Viceroy says it again later in the episode when Ventress frees him. He's like,
I will buy you a planet.
It's just like, as like off the cuff remark, just like, and he gives Commander Gree, a clone, the same option. And it just does not faze him at all.
But it's just because he's conditioned from birth.
Well, yeah, and I think that's the argument that Captain Argyus makes. Is
like,
that
the clones always mention that they're like fighting for the Republic, but like they didn't even grow up in the Republic.
Yeah,
they grew
Camino's
up in just Camino.
Yeah.
So it's just conditioned in their mind.
Then again, like, it's also conditioned in the other, like, whoever this guy is, he's blonde.
Yeah.
That's okay. This blonde guy. Like, it's also conditioned in his
Captain
mind
Angus.
that, like, yeah, Captain Angus.
Captain Despair.
Whatever. Captain Cowboy.
Yeah, he seems like a frat boy.
Yeah. It's like, oh, shut up.
Oh, Count Dooku bribed me with this 6-pack of Bud Light.
It's, you know, it's conditioned in his mind, too, of just, like, oh, if I get some, like, money, then I can, like, go be free. Like, yeah, have fun with that. Like,
yeah, well, the Jedi hunt you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, now you're just gonna, like, have to go figure it out on your own.
Yeah.
Like, that's not gonna be fun. Like, you know, what is freedom? This episode asks us to ask ourselves.
Answer, no one knows still.
So at the end of Cloak of Darkness, New Gunray escapes with White Boy, but then White Boy gets killed
by White Goth Girl. Yeah, it's a big surprise. Viceroy Gunray gets away because, of course, he's got to show up later in ROTS. Jordan, next episode, Lair of Grievous.
Lair of Grievous. The stars Kit Fisto and his Padawan, former Padawan, now Jedi Knight, Nahdar.
Or Fish Boy.
Fish Boy, as I call him.
Nahdar! Congratulations on passing the trials. I'm sorry the war prevented me from seeing your training true to the end.
You were Mistmaster, but it is an honor to finally serve beside you as a knight.
And they are sent to track down New Gunray, where he went. And it's on some remote planet, no idea.
Really, like, clear signs of spooky planet.
Very spooky
from
planet.
beginning, just like fog everywhere.
Fog everywhere.
Ancient stone temple.
So much fog, you gotta move the fog with the Force. Because you can't even see. And they go inside and are tricked. New Gunray's actually not there. It's just a hologram.
And and Count Dooku has led them there.
Correct, and this whole episode is a trap set for Grievous, made by Dooku and Sidious, I guess, to test his abilities, because I guess he hasn't been doing too well.
Keats, any comments on that?
Of course he hasn't. I mean, he's terrible.
He just runs away every single time. He loses a hand.
He hangs up on his master all the time.
He hung up on him in this episode.
Yeah, he did.
He did, yeah. You're right.
Just always hanging up on him.
Dooku doesn't like it.
Yeah.
Grievous is just always like, oh!
He's frustrated at all times.
Yeah, he's just always
Literally.
really mad.
No, yeah, this actually kind of retroactively enhances malevolence for me, because I wasn't too hot on that arc, but just like seeing like their kind of answer to Grievous's constant failures, having like a test build for him was a really cool idea.
It's also pretty hilarious that like the Sith are using droids.
And General Grievous wants to be one of them because they are an improvement.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing to talk about, and I really wanted to talk about it the last few weeks because Grievous has been in a couple episodes at this point. Grievous is a cyborg,
which we don't really find out until this episode.
Yeah, I mean, there's the implication because
see his eyes.
Yeah, the most important part of his design. I mean, his design I think overall is great, but it's exactly that, Jordan. It's the recognizably animal eyes beneath a droid visage, and I think the design has always been really effective, which is why people have gravitated towards the character, and they really capitalized on it in this episode in terms of trying to get into the psyche of someone who would turn themselves into a droid, and I thought that was cool. And obviously, this is an idea that's been seeded in Star Wars from the very beginning with Darth Vader, and I think it's kind of a popular thing that people talk about now, and I've seen reposted a lot. The idea that the Sith characters or the antagonists in the prequel trilogy all are like one version of Darth Vader foreshadowing. Grievous is the sort of like foreshadowing of the idea of this warrior disappearing behind the computer. Basically.
He wanted to though because he mad kinky.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a fetishy quality to Grievous.
Oh, 100%.
Why do you say that? Like, can you just say? I mean, not that I disagree with you. I just want to hear more about your Grievous kink droid theory.
It's just like he was just a warrior and he was so into becoming a droid, he wanted to just eliminate everything about himself besides, I guess, what made him, like, still living. I think he still has his eyes, his brain, and his heart. And then everything else is just droid parts. And then he just has, like, a room full of, toys. And all these different droid body parts. And, like, even, like, the one droid who was fixing him up was like, oh, you keep making, like, modifications. So he keeps, like, upgrading himself and changing himself.
Yeah. I guess that's, like, the ultimate in domination. It's like
he wants to be dominated by the droid.
You're like dominating like your entire body by like changing every part of it, but then he is also like dominating all the other droids by being like the droid leader.
Mm-hmm. I feel like he might have been unhappy too, as like not being a cyborg. Mm-hmm. Well, he is a cyborg, but he calls himself a droid.
Yeah, there's the implication he was something of like a noble warrior at a point in time. Kid Fisto, I think, like says that directly, is like, you might have once been noble. And we don't really know his actual backstory in canon. Like, we know he was a warrior based off of those sculptures. Is he like really old? Like, what type of war was he fighting? Is it part of his culture? Was he fighting the Republic? Was he fighting pirates? Like, what was that? We don't really know.
My impression was less of like a war. It wasn't like a warrior. He was more of like a hunter. He was just like doing it for like the fun of it, as opposed to like the purpose of it.
But eventually over time he submitted to what he perceived to be improvements by, it's like transhumanism basically. He didn't want to be organic, or wanted to be as little organic as possible. And
you see his when they show the statues, when they're walking through his like lair, it shows like the first statue is like him fully organic, and then like the second one he has like droid arms.
Yeah, he has the classic Grievous droid arms.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't think about that at all.
Yeah, so it's like, did he like chop off his own arms,
yeah,
or did he lose them? Injured in battle, like,
and then it just grew to his entire body. I think that's kind of like the fetishy element of it as well, like the escalation factor. Like
I guess
starts
not so
off,
much. Yeah, it's like a fetish, not a kink.
Yeah, it would be like, if Anakin started off with that robotic limb, and of his own volition just kept going and kept turning into a cyborg.
It's different with Darth Vader. Like with Darth Vader, it's like
he's a victim.
He's like, oh well, I just have to do this because like it's like my only option. But like Grievous is like, he's like, hell yeah.
For me at least, I think it's definitely like the missing piece in Grievous's whole character is like a proper backstory, just because you're given this character and he constantly flubs and messes up all the time, and you don't really have any reason to root for him or like just to like really think of him as an opposing threat, other than like he knows he's like tactical and that's it. So I think like knowing more in depth his story would really make me appreciate him more as a villain, because I don't really think he's that interesting of a character, to be quite honest.
I totally agree with you. Like, I was just like, oh, this is just like another like angry, like just his name, Grievous. It's like he's not like malevolence, like he's not Ventress, like he's not Dooku, which is also kind of funny. He was like Count Dookie. That's what I always think. It's just like Grievous. Like he's always aggrieved. He's always just like, oh, why me? Like, oh, bother. Like, I screwed up again, but I'm like blaming it on everyone else. But now thinking about his backstory, he's more interesting.
Yeah, I think definitely, and even just thinking about it too is gross. I mean, there's the great like moment where they like have to remove his mask, but they don't show you what's going on underneath. I mean, presumably it's pretty nasty.
I wanted to see it so badly.
Yeah,
me
but
too.
It's better that we don't. I think it's definitely cooler. Just the idea that it's like painful and like that those parts of him are still like the most vulnerable to attack. Wink, wink.
And this episode is called Lair of Grievous.
Yeah, because presumably this is his home. He even has like a mutant dog.
Well, isn't that Lair, not Lair?
Like Lair.
Oh yeah, it's Lair.
It's
Yeah,
Lair of Grievous.
Yeah, like his home, not like layers of Grievous. But that's a good. I didn't think of that. It could be a double entendre.
Pieces of me. Grievous is like an onion.
I think it is his home because he has like his trophies.
Yeah.
Of like the Jedi that he killed.
I find it interesting. The droid is presumably from his previous life, because like the droid implies that he was there like when General Grievous started making the changes. And the creature, Gore, I mean, he has like a really strong connection. He has like this pet that I guess he has some affection for. And
dude, he loved that pet.
I know, he really loved the pet. Gore! No! But presumably that creature could be from his old life too. I mean, that could be like native to his homeworld. We don't really know enough about it. I think that's kind of interesting. Like, if that was like his actual pet, like the idea that he also forced his pet to get cybernetic enhancements too, because he's like so into it. It's pretty creepy.
This episode made Grievous so much more creepy than he already was. Like when they chop off his legs and then he's like crawling around and like choking clones.
They knew how to make him. I mean, it's a really smart design. It's gross. It's you accept it when you look at it, but there's like lots of things to do with this creepy crawly.
And he definitely like made his lair like purposefully so he had the opportunity to like swing from the ceiling.
I thought about that too, because he's just like climbing on the ceiling like it's normal.
Very casual.
Yeah.
Well, we wanted to talk about also like the rights of like how he is kind of put through like a test.
Yeah.
By the Sith.
Yeah, and that's true for the previous episode as well with Ventress, because Ventress is sent on the mission, and right before he goes, like Count Dooku's like, "Listen, Sidious is not happy with your performance. You've got to succeed here." And then, literally in universe, it's probably like literally 5 minutes afterwards. It's the same thing for General Grievous. He's put these plans in motion to test them, and as an audience member watching in chronological order, the only things that Ventress and Grievous have done so far, they haven't really done too much. They've messed up more than they've done right.
They failed.
Wow, what a supportive workplace. It's as much pain as they inflict on everyone else, they inflict like tons of pain on themselves.
Yeah. And that's kind of like the whole Sith modus operandi too, which is like part of Grievous isn't a Sith, but presumably, he says that Count Dooku's trained him, so like he's trained in some of those arts at least, even if he can't practice the Force. And Ventress is like a Sith in training as well. It's even at the point where in the episode, there's like a big dramatic beat about it where Kit Fisto and Nahdar are like looking back at each other, and it's just like, why would they set a trap for themselves? Like, they literally just don't understand why anyone would do that. It's like totally like a foreign concept to them. Like,
these must be trophies taken from the Jedi he's murdered. There are so many.
Why would Dooku want to set a trap for his best general? Doesn't make sense.
Are we the bait, or is Grievous the bait?
We must consider who this trap is for.
Like, they can't understand that that's how the Sith operate, even though they should know that by now, because it's like the main thing about the Sith is that they, they're constantly trying to test and overthrow and compete with each other, and then, but like Kit Fisto and Nahdar like can't understand that basic concept.
And that would be like a really good weakness to exploit, like strategically to help win the war. I don't know if they ever do that.
Right. I guess, yeah, I mean, Nahdar, I think, kind of sees that as an opportunity, which is, I think, something we wanted to talk about as well. Just like, Nadhar's like, well, of course, if this is a trap for Grievous, then this is our chance. Like, we kill Grievous today. And everyone else is like, I don't know, this is, like, very questionable and pretty dangerous, and this was not what we were expecting going into this. It's probably a better idea to leave and create a plan.
Yeah, it's like shit or get off the pot, guys.
Yeah.
Nahdar is just way too hot-headed.
And Kit Fisto ultimately ends up retreating as well. So, like, when it's just him, he could choose to stand his ground, and maybe he has a chance of killing Grievous, but instead he just leaves.
He's more, like, cool, calm, and collected, and one of my favorite lines was,
I didn't forget to teach you restraint, did I, my old Padawan?
I am sorry, Master. I got carried away.
Those who have power should restrain themselves from using it.
Kit Fisto's just looking at him like, dude, you didn't need to use the Force there. Like, know when to use your power.
Yeah.
And Nahdar's just, I'm a knight now. I need to prove myself, and needs to just kill Grievous by himself. And it's like, dude, calm down. Work together.
And I think Nadhar's characterization is pretty consistent with Ahsoka's in the previous episode as well. We talked about this in the first Clone Wars episode 3 of our podcast. When Ahsoka's introduced, she definitely gives off the impression that she has been raised in a different time than all the other Jedi we know are. Ahsoka is growing up in a world where the Sith are back, where they're in the first war in 1,000 years, and I think that definitely has a huge effect on Nahdar and Ahsoka. And Nahdar even has they announced at the beginning that Kit Fisto had to leave Nahdar in order to go fight, because Kit Fisto's such a great fighter. He just left, and Nahdar had to finish his training by himself, which is really a weird concept.
I don't remember that. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's the first line they say to each other. It's like, hey, sorry I missed you becoming a knight and that whole thing for the past few years, but I love you. You're a great student.
Wow.
But I love you.
Yeah, Nahdar let the war just change his mind. Because Kit Fisto is still the same Jedi he was before the war, not letting his power get to his head, which is, I think, Nahdar's biggest struggle.
Right, and that's something we were talking about earlier in regards to Bombad Jedi, where they have that quote about heroes are made by the times, where these kind of hapless idiots become heroes, but then the heroes are susceptible to become villains. So it's all topsy-turvy.
Grievous is going to pay for this. I will destroy him.
I understand your pain, but you forget your teachings, Nahdar. Revenge is not the Jedi way.
But in this war, strength prevails. The rules have changed.
Perhaps you are the one who has changed.
All right, I think that's a good note to wrap up on. Thank you for joining us this week. For next week, please watch Season 1, Episode 11, Dooku Captured, Season 1, Episode 12, The Gungan General, Season 1, Episode 13, Jedi Crash, and Season 1, Episode 14, Defenders of Peace. For any updates and an up-to-date schedule, you can check us out on Facebook and Instagram. This has been Yates,
Keats, Jordan,
Jessica.
Signing off. May the Force be with you.